Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
This is Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
Today we are going to be doing another fun book talk challenge and talking about some books that we love and don't love. We're having a lot of fun doing these, so let us know if you're having fun too, and if there's some challenge that we're missing or haven't seen that we should be doing in a bonus episode. But without further ado, let's jump in to the challenge. First question, what is the book that you are currently reading, not for the podcast?
Currently reading Babel by R.F. Kuang for me.
I've got that one on my library checkout list. In 10 weeks, I might be able to listen to it.
That's a long waiting list. Must be popular.
It's such a popular. It's such a popular book. It's been on my waiting list. I think through Libby for, I don't know, like 2 weeks now. Barbara, ever since you told me you got into it, and I added it. But
it's a very long book. It's a big book, but that's okay. Slowly but surely, I'm reading.
I know how that goes. Okay, I am currently reading The Exiled Queen by Cinda Williams Chima. I think I'm pronouncing her last name right.
Kima, probably.
I said, yeah, Kima.
Well, if it's Kima, then I apologize for saying it as Chima.
I have no idea.
I don't know. Actually,
but that's the book that I'm reading. It's the second book in the Seven Realms series Barbara recommended to me. I read the first book in 2019. I looked at Goodreads for this, 2019, and I'm just now reading the sequel. Because I'm actually caught up on podcast books, and so I was like, oh, well, let's see if I can squeeze in a different book. So that is what I'm currently reading.
I just started Verity by Colleen Hoover, falling into the BookTok hype. But I have read some of her other books, and I really liked them previously. So, like, It Ends With Us, I think is what it's called. I read that, like, when it came out, and I liked that one.
Did you like that one?
The It Ends With Us? Yeah, I did.
I've heard not great things.
I liked it. I mean, it wasn't like my favorite book ever, but I did like it. It's kind of spicy. It's got some spicy aspects to it, and the good old love story.
Yeah.
It's not it's not one that I'm like recommending to everybody or anything, but I enjoyed it, and I like Colleen Hoover. So I just started that one. I mean, I've obviously read like 2 or 3 books just in January here, but they were all for the show for future episodes, so I couldn't count those. So yes,
not for this
just started
question.
That one. So far, so good on Verity. We'll see. Time will tell.
That's how it always goes, I think, right? Well, I guess sometimes you probably know like right away, or if it's a series that you're already into, you're probably going to enjoy it. But let's see. Next question: what is your last 5-star book? And for me, I had to look on Goodreads because we read so much for the podcast, and I try to read some outside, so I had to scroll back. And the last one that I gave 5 stars was Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, which is the second book in the Stormlight Archive series.
Yeah, I think I'm just a really harsh critic because I have very few 5-star ratings on Goodreads. Like, I had to go back and sort through all of them, and it's like Harry Potter and Fight Club and all of my like most favorite books. And so I think the closest high rating that I have given a book would be The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, which we did on the pod. And I rated that like 8.75 out of 10, which is probably one of my higher podcast ratings too. So I don't have a 5-star, but I have that. So, and I did really enjoy that one.
So yes, Lauren, that is your highest rating of all time you've ever done on the podcast. We talked about that on that episode a lot, joked around that you never give books that high of a rating. I think we all rated that one pretty high, but I'm pretty confident you were still higher than Barbara and I.
I think that I need to because I was talking to Barbara about this earlier, but I feel like I need to stop rating books based on like the books that made me fall in love with reading, because nothing is ever going to measure up to that. Like, nobody is ever going to get more than a 4. So I think I need to like do a reset of like, okay, we know like these books are like top shelf books. We're just going to like put those aside and then start rating books based on like a new scale, because otherwise I'm never going to have a 5-star book again.
Yeah, I told her I had to do that. Yeah.
We reset every season so that we don't have to compare every single...
It's not even that. It's not even like for the podcast. Just me in general. I've decided that I shouldn't compare it to my favorite books because, like Lauren said, it's just they're not going to reach that. So I just look at it in itself and be like, did I enjoy reading this? Like, did it accomplish what I needed it to accomplish? Was it just get me out of what I'm doing in life and, set me in this world of this book? And then did I enjoy it? So did I really, really enjoy it? Then I was like, oh, okay, I did. So it's a 5 if,
I need to do that because not just for the pod. Like obviously we reset every season, but like for my like handful of top 10 favorite books of all time, like it's not fair to compare books to those. So
that's a good
anywho,
point.
yeah.
Mine would be The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. And we actually read that for the pod, and I really, really enjoyed it. So that was my last one. If you want to check out our review, look at the podcast episode that we did over it. Shameless
I was not
plug.
surprised that being your answer. I know how much you liked that one. I think we all rated that one decently high too, actually, for our podcast review. I'm pretty sure we all liked that.
I don't remember.
Not as I think you rated it like kind of like Lauren rated hers higher than anybody else. I think you did the same for this one, but I think it was positive around the table, so to speak. Let's see. Next question: what is a book that you keep putting off?
I don't intentionally put off any books right now. I feel like it's more a matter of the limited time that I have and then having to prioritize podcast books. So then books that I want to read for pleasure kind of get put off, I suppose. But it's not like I'm putting this off because I don't want to read it. It's more like I'm delaying my gratification because I have an obligation to read the ones for the pod. So if I finish those, then I get to read the others, but there's not really been one that I'm like, I'm putting this off.
Yeah, same. Like I don't do that on purpose. Like I'm not really sure I have one because I'm not blatantly putting off any reading because I've never done that. Because if I don't like a book, then I guess I tend to finish books even if I don't like them, but I don't go out of my way to pick a book I don't think sounds interesting to me either. And like, why would I spend time and money on that if I'm not super interested, unless it's a podcast book. So I don't think I really have one because I've never really blatantly put anything off like, I really want to read this, but I really don't. Because I know a few people do this if it's like super intimidating size wise, and I've never had an issue with reading a larger book, so I don't have one for this.
So after you guys answered your question, I think I do have some for this, but I'm going to say what I wrote down in my notes first, which is that Barbara would tell you that the answer to this question should be The Diviners, because many years ago I read that, the very first book. It was the first book I read on my Kindle that Barbara convinced me to get when we first started dating.
Years ago at this point. Years ago.
And
I don't know how...
Many moons ago.
I don't know how he starts a series and then all the books are out. Like all of them for the series is out and his ass still be like, nah, let me start another series. It's like, why do you do that to yourself? Like he has like 20
This is a personality trait of mine.
That he refuses to finish, and I don't see how you do that to yourself.
That's why I don't start series very often.
Man, it's everything. It's TV shows, it's video games, I'm bad at that. But after you guys answered your question and described it the way that you did, there are actually two series that I will speak to on this that I do keep putting off. And it's partly because of what you said, Barbara. Not necessarily intimidated by the size, but the Stormlight Archive series is something I'm super excited to read. I've read two of them. I've given both of them 5 stars. I love the series. The books are massive. And so sometimes I will find myself being like, I want to read this. Like, but I don't have that much time in between podcast books. Like I'm going to have to read like half of it and then put it down and then read the other half, which I know, like logically, that's what I'm going to have to do because that's how I read the first 2 when we were doing the podcast. But sometimes I do find myself talking myself out of that because of the length.
Never done that.
Similarly, but not because of length. I'm also reading through the Wheel of Time series, which for those of you that know the Wheel of Time series is massive. And the books aren't necessarily as long as the Stormlight Archive, but for whatever reason, I find myself struggling to start a book in the series. And once I started and I get like a quarter of the way through, I'm hooked. But for some reason, in book 2 and now book 3, the openings are kind of dry to me. Don't come at me, Wheel of Time fans, if you're in love with the entire book, every page. But so I find it hard to get into the book. And so sometimes I'll start it. Like I started The Great Hunt, which is book 2 of the Wheel of Time, like 4 times. I reread the first few chapters probably 4 times because I would start it and be like, and move on to something else and then I have to come back to it. So I think that counts for this category, right?
Yes. Yeah. That literally would be the description of this
to a T. So I was able to cover, I had 3 series that I covered. You guys didn't have answers. I was able to provide the answers for all of us. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, apparently this is something that I do. Moving on to the next question. What is a book that came out this year that you think is underappreciated?
So I feel like this is a bit hard to answer because it's January of 2023, and I haven't read any books that have come out in January. So we're going to just cheat and lie and say last year since we're so close to 2022 still. And it's not like, mid-August of 2023. So I would say it's a series as a whole. And it's called Legendborn Cycle by Tracy Dion. And the second book did come out last year, and it's called Bloodmark. And I think it's a severely underappreciated book as well, and I really 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 enjoyed it. So I think that's one that I would say is super underappreciated, and I wish more people would get into it and love it, and it would blow up on BookTok, because I think it really should be all those things. And I see a few people on BookTok enjoying it and liking it, but it's not like some of these other books I've seen that just kind of blew up, that I just think there's a small following, and I just want to see it be like this huge successful type thing that I've seen other books be, that I don't think should be as highly beloved, whatever you want to say.
So when I saw your answer for this one, I was like, ooh, what a good choice, because I also loved that first book I guess you read it before I did, and then I also read it later. And then I looked, because I was like, well, let me just look on Goodreads and see, what did I read that came out in 2022 in 2022. And the only book that I read in 2022 that came out in 2022 was Blade Breaker by Victoria Aveyard, the second book in the Realm Breaker series. And I was like, oh, I can't pick that. That's got to be, it's Victoria Aveyard. It's got to be like super popular. There's no way this is underappreciated. And then I got on Goodreads, and it only has less than 5,000 ratings on Goodreads compared to like her Red Queen books that have like hundreds of thousands of ratings. I was shocked.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's why I picked it, because apparently it's underappreciated, and damn it, you need to get out there and read that book, because they're so good. I love both of those books. Those are 2 5-star books for me. It just happened to not be as recently for me as the one that I mentioned earlier. So I was shocked to find out that those were underappreciated and disappointed. And if you're listening to me right now and you haven't read the series, at least read the first one. Give it a try.
I will not be giving it a try.
Okay, you're fired. This is Lauren's last episode of the podcast, guys.
I actually think, Lauren, that you would like it.
You think I would like it?
I really do, because it's a fanny, but do you like Lord of the Rings, right?
I did not read Lord of the Rings. I tolerated the movies.
Oh,
yes.
Well, maybe not then.
I enjoyed like The Hobbit, but I didn't love Lord of the Rings movie. I don't know. It was just really long.
It's her love letter and ode to Lord of the Rings, but with badass female characters, and so that's why I think you might like it. But if you're not a huge Lord of the Rings fan, then maybe not.
Yeah, it's probably not going to be at the top of my list to try it, but maybe if somebody recommends it, then maybe so. For me, I did not apparently I don't read books that come out in the same year as I'm reading them. So I even looked back at all the ones we did for the podcast, and I couldn't find any that were 2022 books.
We are very good at that. I've noticed that too, because I struggled with these 2 questions. So
yeah, I just literally put that I don't have one, because
goals for 2023.
Read anything that came out in 2022?
I didn't read anything that came out in 2022. I don't think. I mean, I read Atlas of the Heart, which is coming up later, which is a Brene Brown book, but I think that's actually talked about in the next question. But like, I don't think it's underappreciated. It got a lot of hype, so I don't really have one that fits this category.
So what would you consider appreciated? Because I just looked up Legendborn, but I mean, Legendborn has come out a while ago, and that has 82K rating reviews.
I mean, that's quite a few ratings, I would say. Like, I would say anything over like 40,000.
Yeah, the second one, which came out this in November, has 16K. So maybe it is. Maybe I don't know. It is. I still think it needs to blow up. I want like billions of reviews on this book.
So I guess when I think like an appreciated book versus an unappreciated book, like if we look at like Dark Matter, the book that got Lauren into science fiction, has almost 400,000 ratings.
Okay, see, yeah.
Like I'll never mention, like if we're ever doing something like this, and the goal is to talk about something underappreciated, like I'll never talk about a Brandon Sanderson book, because they all get read immediately by hundreds of thousands of people, because he has a huge fan base.
So I would still consider the Legendborn series still underappreciated, because yes, it has more. But like, I wanted to see in the 500,000 500Ks reviews.
So I think it's still valid. It has more than Blade Breaker and Realm Breaker, but I would still call it an underappreciated by comparison to some of the ones that are super appreciated. Let's see. What is a book that came out this year, so 2022, since this is January, going to be February 2023, that you think everyone needs to read? So what is a book that came out in 2022 that you think everyone needs to read? And like we've clearly made it,
we've clearly struggle bust on this category.
We are all reading books that are from years before, sometimes years and years and years before. So I'm so behind on that I'm not reading current books apparently. And goals 2023. I think we should try to get some 2023 books on the pod. We're going to do that, I guess, for a couple, but I digress. I'm not reading any current books apparently. I'm just reading all these books that are from like the 90s and the early 2000s. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to choose the Bloodsworn Saga, which is the series by John Gwynne. Barbara and I read the first one for a bonus episode a little while back. Maybe it was a real review. Was it a bonus episode or a real episode?
No, I think it was a real episode. It's just one of those we read because your sister was on maternity leave, I believe.
That's right, Lauren. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was a full-blown episode. Anywho, we read the first book, which that technically came out in 2021, but the second book in the series, which is still ongoing, came out in 2022, and I bought it. So I think that counts. Like that's the closest that I can get to a book. Part of the series came out in 2022. I highly recommend the series. I think you need to read it if you like fantasy, or if you don't like fantasy but you like Vikings and you think like Norse lore is really cool. We both had a lot of fun reading it. I think we both gave that book pretty high marks. I know I did. I'm not sure what Barbara gave it. But,
I like Viking stuff. I've always enjoyed different religious stuff like that. Like I was a weird child and enjoyed Vikings and Romans and Greek and all that kind of things, and Hindu gods and goddesses and all.
So go out there and read these books. Shadow of the Gods is the first one. Hunger of the Gods is the second one. Go to the bookstore, by the way, and look at them, because the covers for these books are also really freaking cool. But again,
never judge a book by its cover, though. Never do that. Never do that. Twilight looking at you.
Ooh, shots fired.
Prior of the Orange Tree. Looking at you.
Prior of the Orange Tree with the dragons. I swear, if the second one doesn't have dragons and the cover has such a cool dragon on, I'm going to be so sad again.
Be prepared for sadness. Anyway, that's my answer for this one.
So I chose Atlas of the Heart, which I mentioned before, by Brené Brown. This one's nonfiction. It is like an educational, psychological, motivational type book about emotions, the 83 emotions that we experience as humans and how they work, the integration into the body, and how we utilize and navigate those emotions to form meaningful connections with people. Obviously, as a therapist, this is kind of right up my alley, but it also got a lot of hype just for everybody. Brené Brown has a huge following. So I think that, this being her biggest recent book, and then she also, I think they adapted this either on Hulu or Prime as a TV series, like where it's kind of like a series of TED Talks, essentially is what it looks like. That's kind of the format of it. I've only watched one of the episodes just because of time, but it's a really good book for, I feel like, anybody that wants to get to know themselves better and develop more meaningful, deep connections with people.
You can fire shots at me for this question, Lauren, but is this the one that we bought you as a gift? Is this the book that we bought you Brené Brown book? Oh, yeah, yes, I knew it. All right.
It is, yeah. Yes, sir.
I don't read enough nonfiction books. Actually, I don't remember the last time I read a nonfiction book.
I read very few. Yeah.
More of a fantasy head in the clouds kind of reader, and
I definitely don't read very much nonfiction, but anything that Brené Brown puts out, I read. And then there's a couple other authors in that wheelhouse that I really enjoy.
So yeah, we've all mentioned I don't think I read many books that came out in 2022 that I also read in 2022. Although I had like 3 books that I got from NetGalley that technically did come out this year. So those count. And I just remember that because I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, that 100% counts.
Yeah, I mean, they came out in 2022, but I completely forgot about that. So, I might have to reevaluate that. But I originally put Blade Breaker because it came out by Victoria Aveyard. That came out in 2022. Of those 3 that I read, I think I really liked Violet Made of Thorns that came out. what is it, fairy tale retelling, and it kind of mixes, if it's not just one fairy tale, it kind of mixes a few different ones into one. So I actually really enjoyed that. So now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I'll pick that one. So that was I really enjoyed that one. So
I'm gonna put you on the spot, Barbara, right now. I'm gonna do it.
Oh.
So you forgot those. Our audience definitely didn't, because your mini reviews of those episodes, those books were very popular. So can you answer for our audience right now? Are you planning on doing any more mini Barbara only reviews in 2023?
I know. So I kind of took a pause of that because I have so many books that I need to read that I've bought outside of requesting NetGalley books. So I don't know. I need to figure something out. I think I go through phases where I read a lot, and then sometimes I kind of do watching TV series and binging that. And so that kind of took a backseat when I was binging some TV series, and I think maybe upstart is going to be books again. So I need to figure something out, because it's hard to read podcast books that I bought and need to read, and then me requesting books that haven't come out yet for NetGalley. So maybe I'll just do like books that I've read that we're not going to review on the podcast, and do a little mini thing for that, because those tend to be a little more recent, that just came out, because I'll like, oh, this sounds good, and buy it, and then it's like a year later, that's when I'm getting to read it, or 2 years later, 3 years later. So maybe I'll do that for the 2 people that listened to those.
It's more than 2 people. Bring back the Barbara mini pods. Anyway, our next question is one that I think no one that's been listening to this podcast for any amount of time is going to be surprised by any of our answers, to be perfectly honest. But it's, what is the book that you have reread the most?
Yeah, no surprise here. The Harry Potter series. And I would say probably book 1.
I need to make sure to get a gasp in there. I'm so shocked.
So much surprise. I used to reread it every year. Since having the girls, I have not reread it. And just since the pod started, because I just don't have time. But I would say probably the first 3 books I've reread the most, because sometimes I would start my reread and then not get through all of it. So, Harry Potter.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to be honest, it would be one of the Harry Potter books, as I've lost count on how many times I've actually reread those in my entire life. But, when all I had to worry about is going to school, it was a lot easier to read a lot more books, because I just, during the summer, I just had free time, and that's when I would do a bunch of reading. And now that I'm an adult and have to work, it becomes a little bit harder to read as much as I used to when I was younger and just had to worry about schoolwork and living the dream. So yeah, I mean, I had more time to reread books back then. I've reread quite a few book series, but definitely one of the Harry Potter books. But I actually haven't reread one in a very long time, actually. So,
in the words of Avril Lavigne, "Dear life, why'd you have to go and make things so complicated?" So Barbara didn't have time to read anymore.
Are those the actual lyrics?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Dang. The 2000s called.
I couldn't resist. I knew at least Lauren would laugh, because she used to listen to Avril a lot when we were younger. Anyway, my answer for this one's not going to surprise anybody any more than Harry Potter for the 2 of them. It's the Tolkien books, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I read them for the first time. Well, The Hobbit, I wasn't even old enough to read. My mother read it to me when I was a little boy. And then when I got old enough to read, I wanted to read it, and I read it again, and I've read it many times since then. I've read The Hobbit a lot more than I've read the Lord of the Rings series, just because I reread The Hobbit more than once before I had the Lord of the Rings series when I was a kid. I have some old trade paperback copies on the bookshelves of the Lord of the Rings trilogy that are very well loved. Barbara would say they've been abused. I'm going to say they're well loved.
Not me. Book people in general say you abused those damn books. So
same with my first set of Harry Potter books. They were Michael's, so then I got them pre-abused, and then I further abused them. And then I also bought a set that I let my 4th grade class read, and it was strictly just I bought it for the classroom library. And those are like in the worst shape that I've seen books, but I still have them.
Yeah. So my sister was the one who abused my Harry Potter books, and I'm still bitter about that, because I'm even when I was younger, like you can look at some of my books and you can tell which ones I read, and you can tell which ones other people have read.
That's very accurate. Almost every time we go to the bookstore, I think about buying, because there's always like a new collector's edition, like big compilation of the Lord of the Rings all together, and it's like, oh, I should get that and replace it. And it's like, oh, there's something special
you
about
really
the old.
shouldn't. I hate compilation books.
No, I like compilation books. I know you hate them.
I like that if it's a book
technically
that
they
came
were
out,
originally.
I know they were technically originally all one, and they turned it into 3. But
Yes.
God, can you imagine reading that? Like, it would be a struggle bus for me try to not bend the binding and all this stuff, and then it's like a 300-pound book on your lap, and you're like trying to read it.
It's not it's such a gross over exaggeration, like 300-pound book. They act like it's like a bajillion pages tome or something.
You're balancing Santa Claus on your lap.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway, moving on. The next question: What book is your favorite villain in, and who are they?
So this one I really, really had to think about, but I really enjoyed reading Alexandre Dumas books when I was a kid, and mine would be The Three Musketeers, and it would be Milady de Winter. She was a lady back then. Like, this was written in 1844, right? And she was a badass woman. And yes, she is a villain. I understand that. But, like, you didn't really get to see a lot of badass women back in 1844. So even if she was a villain, like, she was using her skills and her assets to do wonderful villainous things. And I was all about that. So sign me up for this. I really enjoyed her character.
So I'm just going to say I'm disappointed in myself because I've never read The Three Musketeers. I'm familiar with the story.
You've never read any Alexandre Dumas books? Oh my gosh, I was obsessed with reading his books when I probably shouldn't have been reading it as young as I wouldn't say shouldn't have read. There's nothing like dirty about his books or anything like that, but it's for adult. I still find this ironic. I digress in this, but I used to read adult books when I was younger, and now I find myself reading young adult books when I'm an adult, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? But yeah, I've read so many Alexandre Dumas books. Man of Iron Mask, Three Musketeers, The Count of Monte Cristo.
Are these on our bookshelf?
No, how do you say library books? I would go. Library. I would say okay. Rent. I don't know if it's rent. Check out, I think is the correct term there. I would check out all these libraries. No, I don't have a lot of books when I was younger just because we couldn't afford it. So my mom I would use that library card and force my mother to drive me every weekend to go get books because I would read it that quickly. So no, actually, I do think I bought this when I was older, but I believe it's still at my parents' house. Actually, now that I think about it, I believe I do have it and it's at my parents' house because I left some books over there. I didn't realize I had when I went back there. I was like, some of these are my books. I need to grab these.
That is definitely, that particular book, The Three Musketeers, is one that you've told me I should read. We've had this conversation before where you were shocked that I have not read any Alexandre Dumas.
I mean, it's like swashbucklers. It was my jam. I loved all that. Like, I loved all his books because of that. And
it's a classic story.
So cool, man. Even though I was like, should I be rooting for her as a child? Perhaps not, but I did.
So, continuing the theme of books that you read as a child that you probably shouldn't have read as a child, my book that has my favorite villain in it is Harris's Hannibal Lecter series, and Hannibal Lecter is a brilliantly written villain. He's super creepy, but that's why he's brilliantly written. The story behind this as to why I was able to read it. I was in middle school, and there was a program where you could borrow books from the high school library, and these books were at the high school library. But to do that, you had to prove to the librarian at the middle school that you were mature enough and had the reading level. So you had to prove you had an adult reading level.
Right, but how do you prove that? Taking quizzes, tests?
So to be honest with you, I think she told me that because she thought that would discourage me from wanting the book. But what happened was I asked, and so she gave me a thing I had to do, and it was I don't even remember what the books were that I had to read, but there were books that were in our library that were higher reading level. I had to read and then take a quiz to prove comprehension, and then
it's like an AR test.
Yeah, and then she was like, "Okay, well, damn it!" Like she didn't say that, but you could tell like that was her reaction. Like, so she did. She let me. I was able to borrow Red Dragon, And I'm sure like the librarian at the high school at the time was probably like, what middle schooler is being allowed to read this book? But I beat her game, so I got to read it.
I chose Tyler Durden from Fight Club, and he is both the antagonist and protagonist. We find out later on. So I think
what?
it's just
Spoilers? What? You should ruin the story for me. Oh, no, I'm just kidding.
Shut up. Fight Club is and always will be one of my favorite books. If you've only seen the movie, you should read the book, like Michael just said about Lecter, because just really, really brilliantly written. Chuck Palahniuk is amazing, and the character of Tyler Durden is wonderful. The other one that I was kind of in between is Amy Dunn from Gone Girl, because that
so
was
good.
kind of it was so good. Like, so it was really well done too. So those are like two of my favorite is Tyler Durden, but that's like more older, and then I would say Amy Dunn from Gone Girl is like one of my more recent favorite villains. Yeah,
Palahniuk is amazing. I agree.
I'll never forget when we got to meet him.
Yeah, that was WSU. Fun. He came to Wichita State University, and we got to go. Yeah. We went to an event where he read some of his short stories that had been published in Playboy, and there was one particular story that we did. Yeah, we got signed books.
Where are those books at? I don't think
mine's on my bookshelf.
Yeah, it's mine's here too.
Oh, mm-hmm. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep. It is. Yeah, no, I love Chuck Palahniuk, and his short stories were fun. And that particular day, there's a particular short story that I'm not going to go into detail on because it's inappropriate for the podcast, but he likes to read it because it's disgusting and he likes to see people's faces. But anyway, moving on, I could talk about that for more than I should, and I'm being played off like it's at the Grammys. So next question: if you got a new tattoo, it would be from this book. I don't have any tattoos, so this was an interesting question. I always thought about it. I've just never done it. But if I was going to get one from a book, I think I would pick the Stormlight Archive, and I would probably pick specifically the symbol of the Knights Radiant, which if you've read the book, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you can Google it and see what that symbol looks like. There's also a quote associated with the Knights Radiant that could be incorporated into said tattoo. That is, life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. That's what I would probably do if I was going to get a book tattoo.
I have wanted a Potter-inspired tattoo for quite some time. I've drawn up several things, so I still want my Potter-inspired tattoo at some point. Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever get it, but we'll see. We shall see.
So I've already got 2 tattoos from books of 3 tattoos that I have. So I'd say I am all about that lifestyle. I just don't really know if I would get another quote or like an image symbolizing something. That's kind of what I am debating currently. And I don't really want to put it out in the universe until I get it. So that's just kind of what I've been debating, whether I want another quote because I have 2 quotes, or if I want more of a image or a symbol of some sort from books that I'm considering. So that's as far as I will get on sharing on my ideas, because I just don't want someone like not steal it, but I don't know. I want it to be unique because I feel there's a lot that you see on the internet. It's like, oh gosh, everyone has that one. So
yes, that's been my problem with Potter tattoos.
I should also say as a caveat to mine, if I did get it, I wouldn't be getting it until the series is completely over, because the internet has pointed out like other people have gotten a similar tattoo to this, and they're always like, well, people on Reddit are like, what if Brandon Sanderson makes them bad and they turn evil by the end of the series?
Daenerys Targaryen, when people name their children after her, and it's like, well, shoot.
They turn out to be the big bad guy at the end. It's like, well, shit, I shouldn't have gotten that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's a caveat there.
No regrets.
Yeah, no regrets.
No regrets. Yeah, either way. Anyway, next one is, if you got trapped inside a book setting, you would want it to be this book.
So I'm sure this is shocking, but I would live at Hogwarts forever. I would be a student, and then I would be a teacher, and then I would be a mentor or something, and I would die there.
I love that. The die. I would just die there.
I would just die there. No, I've always loved obviously it sucks that, and we're not going to get into this, but like that the author, I just disconnect the author with the world now.
Yeah.
But the world that she created.
own this anymore. It is for the readers.
It's for the fans at this point. But the world has always been one of my favorites as far as just like all of the things that I would do, things that I would explore, like the magic, learning all of the spells.
She would finally get her wish granted, and it would have been a vague wish to be teleported into the Hogwarts world, and it would happen during the Battle of Hogwarts. And as she was looking around, all the Marvel around her, she'd get a cadaver, and that would be the end of it.
Oh my God,
wow,
what is
Michael!
wrong with you?
Wow.
He's clearly thought of this. Have you seen like the little glee in his face when he said that?
He was so happy.
I thought of it just now as she was saying it, because like
sure.
I did. It's like the deal you make with devils, where you like if you're not specific, then
listen.
I did not.
I was very specific. I said I would be a student, then a teacher, then a mentor. You have to do that over a course of years, and then die there.
Fair enough.
So mine would be any fantasy book with nice dragons that I can befriend and ride and love and just be like, I love you, dragons, and treat you like my doggo, because that's how I feel about dragons, even though they're
so Priory of the Orange Tree, like the whole book, right?
Well, there's Tani actually did have a dragon for a small smidge of the book, so yes. But or anything with magic that I could do, because I think that would be really, really cool. So I'm gonna list a few, like the Seventh Tower book series, Priory of the Orange Tree. I did list that one, but like I would, more water dragons, less whatever the fire dragons that never really appeared happened. The Legendborn series has really cool magic system. I think that would be neat. It wouldn't be cool to like die early and I'm like giving plot points away, but not really, but who cares? Like those, I could go on and on and on about the different ones that I think would be fun to live in, really. And if I die a early death, so be it. I lived as I died as I lived whatever sane thing, doing what I enjoyed, whatever, doing magic and dying, I guess. I don't know, whatever.
If
Writing
I die,
dragons.
I die.
Yeah, pretty much,
Okay, so for this one, it was kind of tough for me because a lot of the fantasy and sci-fi books I read don't necessarily take place in worlds that I would love to live in, because a fair amount of the books that I read are like grimdark fantasy, and that's like it's fun to read, but like that's a horrible place to be. But anyway,
you don't want to live in the Shire.
Yeah,
I actually did mention Middle Earth, and I'm getting to that if you let me answer the question. No, I'm just kidding. But so a lot of the books I read, I wouldn't want to be trapped there. But what I actually picked was the Mistborn series, but only with the caveat, like you guys had, the caveat I would have to be a Mistborn, because I think if I got teleported into that universe and was any other, I was
going to say, if you're depressing, if you're just a slave,
right? That's literally what I put. Otherwise, I said only if it was a Mistborn. LOL. Otherwise, it would be depressing because it would. But being a Mistborn would be cool. So that's why I'm saying it's hard. Like there's a lot of the book series that I like. Like there's like, oh, this is great, but then like there's this really dark element. It's like, ooh, do I really want to live there? Like this Middle Earth would be really cool. Could I choose a different age where like Sauron's not, bringing down the entire planet?
After Lord of the Rings, when everything gets, wrapped up nicely, then you could just be born then, Michael.
Happily ever after, just right at the end of all of that.
But like Middle Earth, would you want to be like an elf? Because it's like you get cool powers if you're a little Frodo person.
I wouldn't. Lauren said the Shire. I wouldn't want to be a hobbit, not a little Frodo person.
I mean, you would have hairy feet, and that's about it. Like, ooh.
I think I would probably. So it would be. What I literally wrote in the notes was that if I had to be anybody, I would want to be a wizard. Like, if I could just teleport in and be Gandalf.
Yes, but there was only like 3 wizards, so like your chances of being that are very slim to none. So
I'd have to Midnight Library it and take over Gandalf's life and let him no longer get to continue living it.
So are you saying that one of your lives was being Gandalf?
And if I had made a certain decision at some point in my life, I would have become Gandalf in this fictional world. But I digress. That was my other choice. The last one I put down, because I couldn't come up with any good ones, so I put 3. Is Old Man's War by John Scalzi, and this would also, just because I think it would be interesting for those of you that aren't familiar with Old Man's War. At this point in the world's history, we're fighting wars on other planets, and when you get to be a senior citizen, something you can sign up for is to effectively you can sign up to be part of the war. And you're an old human on Earth, but they can put your consciousness into a new artificial body that makes you feel like you're young again and this really like beefy, badass young person. But the caveat is you have to fight in the war and survive the war. And if you do for a certain amount of time, then you get your own plot of land on this new planet that Earth is settling. So that could be interesting. I mean, there's a good chance I would die, and I'm being played off again by Lauren. If you can't see the video, but she's playing a violin, and I'm sure it's very beautiful if you could hear it, but I'm thankful you can't. That's my answer for this question. The next question is, you really wouldn't want to be trapped in this book's setting.
So any dystopian book, like The Hunger Games, 1984, Handmaid's Tale, even though it feels like we're living in that currently, Brave New World, anything like that, I think would be not fun because it's dystopian for a reason. So that would be my pick, unless, you plot me after the fact when everything was like resolved and then I lived in that world. But that
you don't think you could, participate in the Hunger Games, Barbara?
You know what? I would either die very quickly or I think I might be able to survive. It's one or the other because I'm smart enough, I feel like, to be able to do that. But I also have no life skills as far as like hunting and all that stuff. So I would be the fox girl, That would be me. My ass would die eating the berries that I thought I could eat. That would be me. So I would be fox girl. Yep, that would definitely be me.
Okay, so for me, I said I pick a grim dark setting, any of them. And I wouldn't want to be there. The Blade Itself series, A Song of Ice and Fire, the Gentleman Bastard series, all series where you could technically pick maybe a very specific thing and it would be okay, but it's a really dark, not happy world for the most part. Love the books, would never want to live in those worlds.
Mine was kind of different. So I briefly thought about why can't I think of the name of the book? Brandon Sanderson one that we read. Elantris?
Elantris.
Yeah. I briefly thought of like that sort of thing where it's like crazy and like people are dying and whatever. And like other scary sci-fi-ish or dystopian. Like I thought about the Hunger Games. I thought about other dystopian novels I've read. But ultimately, I feel like the scariest thing for me would be like these recursion dark matter type worlds where like you don't know who you are and you don't know.
You're living in one of those.
I know, for all I know I am. It's a mind F, guys. Like the parallel, and I don't know if it's just because these are like literally I made it to 30 without having read parallel universe books. But so maybe it's just this kick we've been on, but I'm thinking like I could do wizards and dragons and like maybe hold my own. Probably not. I'd probably just die. But like to go into a world where there's like multiple versions of you, right? And like there's like Lauren 1 fighting Lauren 2 fighting like and then you're trying to convince
her head droops. Wait, what? Where am I?
Well, or like you're trying to I can't imagine trying to convince my loved ones that like I'm me, guys, it's me. And then there's like 30 others of me saying, "No, it's me." Like that's just I don't know. Sounds like a bad life.
Yeah.
That's valid. That would be pretty terrifying. That's fair.
It's me. Hi. I'm the problem. It's me.
And our final question of this book talk challenge, you will always be recommending this book. And for me, I put either the Realmbreaker series by Victoria Aveyard, because it's, as I said earlier, I'm not going to repeat myself, but you should read it. Or the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. Same reason. It's amazing. You should read it. I'm not done reading it. So I mean, maybe it gets awful, but I'm fairly confident that it doesn't, based on reviews. But yep, those are the two books I would always recommend.
I put like besides Harry Potter, which doesn't really even need a recommendation.
I was going to say Club. Everyone knows about it.
I will never not recommend Fight Club to anyone.
I've actually never read the book, just seen the movie.
The book's better.
I know. I didn't realize both of y'all like really.
Michael,
really
what are you doing?
it.
No, I'm just kidding. My husband hasn't read Harry Potter or seen the movies, so
I was gonna say, okay, Judgy.
We sometimes gravitate towards people that apparently make bad life choices.
Oh wow! Wow! Just because I haven't read Fight Club, dang, Laura.
I'm kidding.
Wow.
I was strictly
Harry
referring
Potter.
I was strictly referring to reading bad choices, right? Not other bad choices.
So in my defense, I had never even heard of these books until the movies came out, and I didn't realize it was based on a book until much later after the fact.
Oh, gotcha.
So,
I don't hold it against you.
Yeah, I didn't. I had no idea. I guess which is surprising because it was an adult book, and I should have been reading it as a small child. It's one of those. But I was too busy reading Stephen King, and
8-year-old Barbara should have been reading Fight Club.
Right. Oh no. I think everyone knows mine is the Divina series by Leva Bray, because I feel like anytime it's one of these things, what I would always recommend. At this point, I'm just going to make it into a thing. So anytime we have a question, I believe this is the one that I recommend. That and Nicholas Flamel, I think, are the two that I always, as a joke, run.
You've recommended both of those to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yep.
When Lauren said Harry Potter, I kind of had a visual of her like walking around a Barnes and Noble today in 2023 and saying, "Hey, have you heard of this series, Harry Potter? I just read the first book. It's remarkable. Have you guys heard of this book?"
I feel like people would look at you like, "Were you dropped as a child?" Like,
they would. Well, that's why I said I don't even need to recommend it.
Away from her.
But honestly, though, when I was a teacher, there's a lot of kids that didn't know about Harry Potter, so I was recommending it to
fair.
Kids that were into like the fantasy stuff, and they're like, "What's that?" And like some of them had seen the movies, but some of them had never even heard of it. So it's really just like an our generation thing,
right? Or our generation who have kids, then bring it into them. And I feel like if your parents didn't really read Harry Potter, then those kids probably don't really realize it. Yeah,
I've already told James that I plan on indoctrinating our children into Hogwarts here soon.
Well, Lauren, just start making him wear headphones when he sleeps and listen to the audiobooks.
Right. Put it in his subconscious.
There you go. Anyway, we have reached the end of another bonus episode. Make sure you're following Badass Literature for free in your favorite podcast app. Give us a rating and leave us a review if they allow you to. It's super important for us. It helps other people see our show. Plus, it makes us feel good to know you guys like it. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. Our username in both places that we exist is at BadassLitPod, and those places are Instagram and Facebook.
Have feedback about today's episode? You can contact us by writing to badassliteraturesociety@gmail.com. You can also send us a DM or leave a comment on Instagram or Facebook.
And with that, we'll see you guys later this month for our full episode. I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
I'm Lauren.
Bye.
Bye.